I think we're good. All right. Hi, my name is Latija Anglin, and what I am going to do in this video is analyze a graphic novel for you called A Small Killing. Before I even get into all of that, I just want to say firsthand, in my opinion, I think this story was a little difficult for me to follow. So I am going to try my very, very, very best to analyze this the best way I know how to. Okay? So let's get into it. Um, So we have the creative team, of course, which would be known as the artist, the person who is responsible for all those pretty pictures and the colors. And that would be Oscar Zarati or Zarit. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But he is the artist. He's the one that is responsible for all of those pictures, all of those drawings, all of those colors. And I think they were actually pretty dope, by the way. Then we have the publisher, who is VG Graphics. This graphic novel is about 97 pages long, so it's a long read, but I would say it's a good read. So don't let the 97 pages discourage you. It's actually a really great story. Um, a Small Killing is basically an original graphic novel. Um, what I found to be very interesting is that it is told in reverse time. Now, that kind of threw me off a little bit because I don't know how you would tell a story in reverse time. But as I started reading it and I got further on into the story, I kinda got the gist of it. But yeah, it's told in reverse time. When I first read the title, like anybody, I was thinking that this is going to be a story about someone who commits a murder, that type of thing. But it's actually not like that. I feel like it's actually kind of like a story about redemption. This is somebody that's seeking something, and the main character seems to, have some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess some kind of guilt that he has to come to terms with. Just things that he's done in his life, things that he may have done to people. Maybe he's having a revelation that he needs to change. And over the last 35 years of his life is where the story takes place, because he's kind of having flashbacks of going down memory lane, talking about certain things that's happened, from him growing up in the English countryside to going to London to finally ending up in New York. Um, so we're going to jump into Act 1. That actually ends on page 29. Um, I believe this shows that the main character, Timothy, is like in a better space and he is content with his life finally, after he has, you know, basically revisited all of the painful memories that he's gone through in his life. So, Act 1, where it ends on that page, I think he's finally saying, like, okay, after all this, I'm content with who I am. I know who I am now, and I'm happy. And notice that I said Act 1 ends on page 29. This is what I'm talking about, where the story is told in reverse, because, you wouldn't think that the story ends in the first, 20 something pages. So, this is what they mean by they're saying that the story is told in reverse. Um, Act two actually begins on page 30. What we have right now is we have a new time frame, and we have a setting. And Timothy is now in London, and that spans over a 6 year time span from 1979 to 1985. And that's what we see here. It actually ends on page 53. You see a train going really fast, so I think this was to show the moment where he decided to leave and to go to London, or he was entering that next phase in his life, you know, or maybe he was running from something. Who knows? It's a lot of symbolism that's going on in this story, so you kind of have to figure out, what means what with these pages and these pictures. Um, Act 3 begins on page 54. We are further back in the timeline. We are now in Sheffield, and the time is 15 years, and it takes place from 1964 to 1979. It actually ends on page 75. Now, it looks as if Timothy, who is the main character, Timothy Holly, he has just witnessed maybe a crime or something, and it looks like he's leaving the scene in the middle of the night. He's actually on a bike. This time he's not on the train. So I think that's just another phase in his life. You know, he went from being on the train going back further into his life. He was on a bicycle. So I think that's like maybe two different phases he has going on in his life. Um, which is why you see him on the bike now and then, you know, before he was on the train. So it's two different stages in his life that he was at. I think the bike and the train, you know, serves as symbols for that. Um, Next, we go into Act 4. This begins on page 76. Now, we are detoured to the old buildings, and I believe that we are still in Sheffield. This is actually a 10-year time span. This is from 1954 to 1964. Now, this act actually ends, in my opinion, on page 96. So we see a simple picture of a nest, and then we have 3 eggs in the nest, and then one of the eggs is cracking. This is the only thing that is on this picture. So I feel like maybe this was put in to use as a symbol as well. You know, maybe um, this is what he felt like, you know, when he was born and the egg is cracked. So, you know, he's having a difficult time trying to journey through life. You know, he was that one that was born different, you know, and now he's having a difficult time trying to figure out who he is, you know, in his life. That's what I feel like that symbolized to me. Um, This is Timothy Holly's story. Now, his initial goal is going to Russia to get ideas for an ad of a soda. He actually works as an ad. What's the one I'm looking for? He's an ad man. So he's going to Russia to get ideas for this ad for this soda. I feel like Act Two does support this as he goes off to London, hoping to draw some kind of inspiration. Got a little tongue tied. Draw some inspiration from, you know, the people, the atmosphere, the environment. You know, he's basically there to do research, pretty much. Um, I wouldn't say in particular that this story arc was solid, because when you first read it, it seems to be all over the place, only because you have two different goals going on. He needs to get inspired to create a new ad in Russia for a product, and at the same time, he is recalling his life over pretty much the last 3 decades, trying to figure out who Timothy Holly is. You know, one minute he's observing people and places in Russia, and then the next thing you know, he has, you know, some kind of memory jogging. And next thing you know, we're back in time and he's remembering things from his childhood. So that's why I would say that this wasn't pretty much a very solid story arc. You know, the story is just kind of here and there. It's all over the place. You know, you're here 1 minute, next 1 minute, and then on top of that, like I said, we're still going in reverse. You know, you have to kind of keep that in mind too when you read the story that it's actually going backwards. So, um, I think if you don't have that in mind, you will be really, really lost when you read this story. So you have to keep that in mind so that it's the story is being told in reverse. I think Timothy Holly definitely has a change in him. Throughout the story, there seems to be some kid following him. So, you know, we don't know where he came from. We don't know why. We don't know why he's following Timothy. Um, I feel like, you know, maybe he is there to help Timothy realize something significant about his life. But as you get further into the story, you realize that this kid, you know, has he's a little evil. He's somewhat of a demon, you know, perhaps. And Timothy seems to think that this kid is following him to try to kill him, you know. But you know, like I said, I think that this kid is just following him to help him to realize that something significant about his life. You know, there's a revelation that he's not getting, and maybe this kid is there to help him realize that. You know, that's what I feel the kid is there for. As far as the transitions, I think some of them were effective. The different time frames really help with that. Like you see where he's at in New York, and then you see where he's in London. You see where he's in Sheffield. I think those really helped me out a lot, because I think if I didn't have those, I really wouldn't know where each act would end or begin. So I think I was fortunate to have those throughout the story. I think those were, you know, some great transitions for the story, because you really need it, because there's a lot going on in here. Um, McCloud's idea of transition is panel to panel. Now, there are some examples of that on a few pages in this novel, like page 36. It's a perfect example of a panel to panel page. I think it makes the pages look more structured and clean versus having different size panels all over the page. It could kind of look like a bit much, but when you have a panel to panel, you kind of just you have a structure and you have a certain flow that's going. So, some of the pages are panel to panel, then the other ones are, a little bit, off. So it goes in and out with McCloud's transition of panel to panel. Um, Even though A Small Killing is sold in paperback, I don't think of it as a mini comic. There are no homemade bindings. There's no staples in it. It doesn't really have that homemade touch, even though it is paperback, but it's manufactured that way. So there's really no staples or no homemade bindings as far as I could tell. I didn't see any. But, being that it is paperback, maybe there may have been some staples in it. Who knows? But, at the same time, I don't think there's no homemade touch with this novel. So, there are some effective use of directional flow. On most pages, you can tell where the text flows perfectly from one panel to the next, but you have other pages at the top of page 38, for example, where you have overlapping dialogue. So the text is kind of like in a circle, and it's kind of like, I wouldn't say all over the place, but it's kind of like all over that one panel. So I don't know. I think if the text weren't placed like directly near the person who is speaking, then you might have a little difficult time trying to figure out who's saying what, and where does this dialogue box go to, and it's kind of going around in a circle, and it's kind of near each person that's saying what they need to say. But like I said, if this wasn't placed near the person who was speaking, this would be really bad. Um, so I would definitely recommend this graphic novel to my classmates only because I feel like it's one of those stories where we all might get something different out of it, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of symbolism in the story, and I would think that it would make for a great discussion. Once again, the story is being told backwards. It's in reverse. So, um, just based off of that alone, I would recommend this to my classmates. Because like I said, I would be interested in knowing what each person would have to say as far as all of the, the symbols and the kid who's a demon or who's not a demon. It just makes for a great discussion, I would feel. Um, I would definitely recommend this to my friends as well. Well, at least the ones that read, anyway. Um, that's bad. I do have one friend in particular though that may enjoy this. I feel like it's right up her alley. And she loves stories like this. She loves movies like this. So, um, I would definitely recommend it to that one friend. Her name is Bria, by the way. But I would definitely recommend this to her. She loves stories like this. Um, in this class, we have talked a lot about the graphics and comics in this class. Well, not really talk about, but we more so we critique the graphics in this comics, and I think maybe there's something that may break, tongue tied again. Sorry, this is something that might make or break a comic. Depending on how the graphics look. I know me personally, if I don't like the graphics, I probably won't read it. That's just me. But with this graphic novel, I think the artist went a different route. It's kind of like he used watercolors. I've never seen it in a graphic novel personally or a comic. So I think that was a daring choice, but it came out really well to me. So I did love the graphics in this graphic novel. My fun fact, I was dreading taking this class because before this, I never even picked up a comic book. Never, ever, 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 ever in my life. I would walk past them. I wouldn't think about reading them. Didn't want to read them. It was done. But I found out that there are tons of great stories written as comics books. So um, I don't know. I think maybe I don't want to make. I don't want to say I'll start reading more comic books again. Maybe I won't. Maybe I will. It just depends. Like I said, I'm not a comic book person, so who knows. But maybe I will start reading more. Who's to tell? You never know with me. But that is it. That is my analysis on A Small Killing. I hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you so much for listening.